The smell of burning meat should have been my first warning that everything was about to go to hell. I stood there at my own barbecue grill, spatula in hand like some suburban warrior, watching my wife Alyssa hold court with our neighbors. She had that particular gleam in her eye, the one that meant trouble was brewing faster than the storm clouds gathering overhead. 3 glasses of wine deep, she was getting that loose-tongued confidence that always made me nervous. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. You know what we should do? Alyssa announced to the crowd gathered on our back patio, her voice carrying that fake cheerfulness she used when she was about to say something cutting. We should trade husbands for the week, like wife swap, but reversed. The laughter that followed felt forced, uncomfortable. I flipped a burger with more violence than necessary, my jaw clenching. Here we go again. Linda Martinez, our divorced neighbor from 3 houses down, raised her wine glass with a wicked grin. I'll take Dave, at least he knows how to work with his hands. She shot me a look that was half flirtation, half pity. Linda had been through her own messy divorce 2 years ago and had zero patience for marital drama. Oh, please, Alyssa laughed, but there was an edge to it sharp enough to cut glass. Dave's like an old lawnmower, low maintenance, reliable, but not exactly exciting. You never have to oil him or anything fancy. Just point him at a project and he goes. The crowd chuckled nervously. Tom Bradley, my best friend since high school and fellow contractor, shot me a look from across the patio where he was manning the beer cooler. His expression said what we were both thinking. This was going too far, even for Alyssa. But she wasn't done. Never was. I mean, seriously, she continued, gesturing with her wine glass. When was the last time Dave surprised me with anything? A romantic dinner, a weekend getaway. He's perfectly content to come home, crack a beer, and watch ESPN until bedtime. Some women might want more adventure. The word adventure hung in the air like smoke from my grill. I knew exactly what kind of adventure she was talking about. The kind that involved staying late at the office with Brad Fenton, the hotshot real estate agent who'd been sniffing around her for months. The kind that required new lingerie hidden in the back of her dresser drawer. The kind that made her phone buzz with messages she quickly deleted. I'd known about Brad for weeks. Hell, half the neighborhood knew. Everyone except me was supposed to know, apparently. Becky Williams, Alyssa's best friend and biggest enabler, tried to smooth things over. Come on, Liz. Dave's a great guy, you're just having fun. Am I? Alyssa's voice took on that dangerous tone I knew too well. Because I'm starting to think some of us settled too early, before we knew what else was out there. That's when I set down my spatula and turned around. Well, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone already took you up on that trading offer, didn't they? The patio went silent except for the sizzling of meat on the grill. Alyssa's face went pale, then flushed red. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. I looked around at our neighbors, Tom and his wife Janet, Becky and her husband Mike, Linda with her knowing smirk, Jerry Peterson from next door, and about 8 others. All of them watching like this was better than cable TV. It means, I said calmly, that for someone who thinks I'm boring, you sure seem to have plenty of excitement in your life. All those late nights with clients, all those emergency real estate showings. Funny how Brad Fenton always seems to have emergencies right around dinner time. Alyssa's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the concrete. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. You're drunk, she said, but her voice was shaking. No, I replied. I'm awake. For the first time in months, I'm wide awake. Linda started to clap slowly, a wicked grin spreading across her face. Well, well. Looks like the lawnmower has some horsepower after all. Brad Fenton chose that moment to stroll around the corner of the house, his red Corvette keys jingling in his hand. He was everything I wasn't, Tall, tan, expensive suit even at a backyard barbecue. The kind of guy who wore cologne to mow his lawn. "Sorry I'm late," he said with that practiced smile. "Had to show a house. You know how it is." The timing was so perfect, it would have been funny if it weren't destroying my marriage. "Oh, we know exactly how it is," I said, looking directly at him. "Don't we, honey?" Alyssa looked like she was about to throw up. Brad's smile faltered as he realized he'd walked into a minefield. "Dave," Tom said quietly, Maybe we should what?" I interrupted. "Pretend everything's fine? Keep playing house while my wife shops for a replacement?" I turned back to face the crowd, feeling a strange calm settle over me. 20 years of marriage, 15 years in this neighborhood, and this was how it ended. In front of everyone, with burnt burgers and broken glass. "Since we're talking about trading," I announced, "and since Alyssa seems to think she can do better, here's what's going to happen. She can pack her bags and go test drive her upgrade full time. I'll even help her load the car." "Dave, stop," Alyssa whispered, but it was too late. "Should I give Brad the spare key now? Or do you want to make it official first?" I asked. "I mean, he's been using it anyway, right?" Brad stepped forward, his chest puffed out. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait," I cut him off. "You want her? She's yours. But don't expect me to make it easy." I dropped the spatula on the ground and walked toward the house. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of whispers and gasps as our neighbors realized they'd just witnessed the end of the Rourke marriage. At the sliding door, I turned back one last time. "Enjoy the barbecue, everyone. The meat's probably burnt anyway." The house felt different after everyone left. Smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. I sat in my recliner with a beer, listening to Alyssa crash around upstairs, slamming drawers and muttering under her breath. The occasional curse word drifted down like toxic rain. When she finally came downstairs, her makeup was smeared and her hair was a mess. She looked like she'd been crying, but I was past the point of caring. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway like she was afraid to come closer. "Do we?" I took a long pull from my beer. Seems like everything that needed saying got said outside. It wasn't what it looked like. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really?" "Because it looked like my wife publicly humiliating me while her boyfriend watched from the sidelines. What did I miss? Brad isn't my... We're not... She couldn't even finish the sentence. "Save it, Alyssa. I've seen the texts. I've seen the receipts from restaurants I've never been to. I know about the new underwear hidden in your gym bag. I'm not stupid, just slow to catch on." Her face crumpled. "It just happened. It wasn't planned." "Bullshit. Affairs don't just happen. They're choices. A series of choices made over and over again." I stood up, suddenly too restless to sit. "How long?" "Dave, how long?" 4 months, she whispered. 4 months. 4 months of lies, of fake smiles, of her coming home and kissing me hello with the taste of another man still on her lips. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is my house too." "Then I'll leave. But we're not doing this anymore. We're not pretending everything's fine while you figure out which life you want." She started crying then, real tears this time. "I made a mistake. It's over with Brad. I'll end it." "You already ended it. You ended us the first time you chose him over me." I walked to the window and looked out at our backyard. The grill was still there, cold now, with plates of abandoned food scattered across the patio table. "You want to know what the worst part is? It's not the cheating. It's the way you talked about me tonight, like I was some pathetic loser you got stuck with. I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did. That's the problem. You meant every word." My phone buzzed with a text, then another, and another. The neighborhood gossip network was already in full swing. "Tom, you okay, man? Want me to come over?" "Linda, if you need anything, I'm 3 houses down. And I meant what I said about the lawnmower comment. Even Jerry Peterson heard what happened. Good for you for standing up. Beer's cold if you need one. Look at that, I said, showing Alyssa the messages. Half the neighborhood saw this coming. Everyone knew but me. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do you want me to do? I want you to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. Go to Brad's, go to Becky's, I don't care, but don't sleep in this house. And then what? I looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But somewhere along the way, she'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could stand in front of our friends and neighbors and tear me down for entertainment. Then we figure out how to divide up 15 years of marriage and move on with our lives. She left an hour later with 2 suitcases and her jewelry box. I watched from the living room window as she loaded her car, half expecting Brad's Corvette to pull up and help her. But she left alone, taillights disappearing around the corner like the end of a movie I never wanted to see. I was pouring myself a whiskey when Tom knocked on the back door. Figured you might want some company, he said, holding up a 6-pack. Depends. You here to tell me I should fight for my marriage? Hell no. I'm here to tell you it's about time you grew a spine. He cracked open a beer and handed it to me. Janet and I saw this coming a mile away. We just didn't know how to tell you. Everyone saw it but me. You saw it. You just didn't want to believe it. Tom settled into the chair Alyssa usually occupied. So what's the plan? Plan? Come on, Dave. I've known you since we were 17. You don't just roll over and take it. You're planning something. He was right, of course. Even as I'd been standing there listening to Alyssa pack, my mind had been working, calculating, planning. Brad Fenton thinks he won, I said slowly. He thinks he got the prize. And I think it's time he learned that some prizes come with a price. Tom grinned. Now you're talking. What do you need? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Linda's name flashed on the screen. You better answer that, Tom said. Linda Martinez is exactly the kind of ally you want in a war. He was right about that too. Dave? Linda's voice was warm with sympathy and something else. Something that sounded like anticipation. How are you holding up? I've been better, but I'll survive. Good. Because I have some information you might find interesting. About your wife and her real estate Romeo. I met Tom's eyes and saw my own thoughts reflected there. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I'm listening. Linda's house had become our unofficial headquarters. 3 days after the barbecue disaster, I found myself sitting at her kitchen table with Tom, Jerry Peterson, and surprisingly, Jasmine Chen from 2 streets over. Jasmine was the neighborhood's unofficial information broker, the woman who knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. Okay, Linda said, spreading photos across the table like she was dealing cards. Here's what we know. The photos were damning. Brad's Corvette parked behind the Marriott downtown. Brad and Alyssa holding hands at Giuseppe's, the expensive Italian place across town. Brad leaving Alyssa's office building at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. How did you get these? I asked. Jasmine smiled. I have my sources. Let's just say the divorce support group has some very observant members. This is enough for any divorce lawyer, Tom said, studying the pictures. Divorce isn't enough, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. They humiliated me in public. They made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. A quiet divorce doesn't balance those scales. Linda leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. What did you have in mind? I'd been thinking about it for 3 days, lying in my empty bed, staring at the ceiling, planning. Brad Fenton had built his reputation on being the neighborhood's golden boy, the successful businessman with the perfect life and the winning smile. He lived for his image, his status, his place in the social hierarchy. That was going to be his weakness. Brad's showing the Henderson place this weekend, I said. The big colonial on Maple Street. Open house. Lots of potential buyers. How do you know that? Jerry asked. Because he's been bragging about it all over town. Biggest commission of the year, he says. His chance to break into the luxury market. And? Tom prompted. And I think it's time Brad learned about customer service. I pulled out my phone and showed them the fake Yelp reviews I'd been crafting. Nothing libelous, nothing that could get me in legal trouble. Just honest customer experiences from people who'd worked with Brad Fenton Real Estate. Unprofessional behavior with married clients. Would not recommend. Sarah M. Promises a lot, delivers very little. Found out he was more interested in my wife than selling our house. Mike T. Avoid this guy. He'll charm you at first, then show his true colors. Jennifer K. These are fake, Jasmine said, but she was grinning. Are they? Or are they just honest reviews from people who prefer to remain anonymous? Linda laughed. You devious bastard. I love it. That's just the beginning, I said. Tom, you still have connections at the print shop? Yeah, why? Because I need flyers. Lots of them. Over the next hour, we planned out what Linda started calling Operation Homewrecker. It was petty, it was vindictive, and it was absolutely perfect. The fake reviews would go live Friday night, just before the weekend rush of house hunters doing their online research. The flyers would be distributed Saturday morning to every house in a 6-block radius. Nothing defamatory, just helpful information about local real estate agents and their unique service offerings. What about Alyssa? Tom asked. That was the question I'd been dreading. Alyssa was staying at Becky's house, according to the neighborhood gossip network. She'd tried calling me twice, but I'd let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear her voice yet. She made her choice, I said. Now she gets to live with it. Dave, Linda said gently, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. I thought about that night at the barbecue, the sound of laughter when Alyssa called me boring, the way Brad had smirked when he walked around the corner, the humiliation that had burned in my chest like acid. I'm sure. Friday night, I sat in my living room with my laptop, posting the reviews one by one. Each click felt like a small victory, a tiny piece of justice served. By Saturday morning, Brad's online rating had dropped from 4.5 stars to 2.5. The flyers were Tom's masterpiece, professional looking, with Brad's headshot and a list of his specialties. Brad Fenton Real Estate. We go above and beyond. Specializing in private showings for married clients, available for emergency consultations at all hours. Ask about our husband replacement program. References available upon request. We distributed them like campaign literature, hitting every mailbox in the target area. By 9 a.m., Brad's phone was probably ringing off the hook. I was having coffee on my front porch when Alyssa's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, like she was approaching a dangerous animal. Hello, Dave. Alyssa. I didn't get up, didn't invite her to sit. What can I do for you? I heard about the reviews, the flyers. Did you? That's interesting. How would you hear about something like that? She climbed the porch steps and sat in the chair she used to occupy every morning, back when we were married, back when I thought we were happy. Brad called me, he's furious. I bet he is. Bad reviews can really hurt a business. You can't do this, Dave. It's harassment. I looked at her over my coffee cup. Is it? Or is it just honest feedback from dissatisfied customers? You know what it is? What I know, I said, setting down my cup, is that your boyfriend built his reputation on being trustworthy, reliable, a family man, and now people are finding out what kind of families he's really interested in. She was quiet for a long moment. I deserve that. But Brad doesn't. Brad doesn't? I stood up so fast my chair rocked. Brad doesn't deserve consequences for sleeping with another man's wife? For sneaking around behind my back for 4 months? For standing in my backyard and smirking while you tore me apart? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I walked to the porch railing, looking out at the neighborhood where everyone now knew my business. You want to know what Brad deserves? He deserves to lose everything I lost. His reputation, his standing in the community, his sense of security. He deserves to know what it feels like to be humiliated. And me? She asked quietly. What do I deserve? I turned to look at her. She was crying again, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved for 15 years had become a stranger. You deserve exactly what you chose, I said. A life with Brad Fenton. Hope it's everything you dreamed it would be. She left without another word. I watched her drive away, then pulled out my phone to check Brad's online reviews. 3 more had appeared since morning, and his rating was now down to 2 stars. This was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Linda organized what she called a block party, but what everyone knew was really a public execution. The whole neighborhood turned out, even people from streets over who'd heard about the drama through the gossip network. I stood by the beer table, watching Alyssa try to act normal while everyone stared. She'd lost weight, looked tired. Brad wasn't with her, which was interesting. According to Jasmine's intelligence network, he'd been avoiding public appearances since the flyer incident. You're enjoying this, Tom said, appearing at my elbow with 2 beers. Shouldn't I be? Just making sure you know what you're doing. Before I could answer, a red Corvette pulled up to the curb. Brad got out, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the party like he owned the street. The conversations around us faded as people turned to watch. Well, Linda said loudly enough for everyone to hear, look what the cat dragged in. Brad's smile was forced, but he was trying to maintain his usual swagger. Linda, Dave. He nodded at us like we were old friends. Great party. It's about to get greater, I said. That's when Sharon Fenton appeared. I'd been wondering when Brad's wife would show up. Sharon was everything Alyssa wasn't. Quiet, reserved, focused on her family instead of her career. She'd been out of town visiting her sick mother, according to Jasmine, but apparently someone had filled her in on recent events. She walked straight up to Brad, ignoring everyone else. Hello, honey, she said sweetly. Having fun? The look on Brad's face was priceless. Pure panic, barely concealed behind his practiced smile. Sharon, you're back early. How's your mom? She's fine. Feeling much better, actually. Good enough that I could come home and deal with some household issues. The entire party was watching now. Even the kids had stopped playing to stare at the adults. Maybe we should talk at home, Brad said, reaching for her arm. Sharon stepped back. Oh, I think here is perfect. After all, this is where it all started, isn't it? At Dave and Alyssa's barbecue. Alyssa had gone pale. She was standing near the food table, looking like she wanted to disappear. I don't know what you've heard, Brad started, but I've heard plenty. Sharon reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. Amazing what you can find when you start looking. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, text messages. She opened the folder and began reading. Tuesday, March 15th. Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell Dave you're working late. That's from you to Alyssa, in case anyone's wondering. The crowd was silent. This was better than reality TV. Sharon, please, Brad said, looking around desperately. We can work this out. Work it out? Sharon laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like you worked things out with Jennifer Morrison last year, or Sarah Chen the year before that? Now it was my turn to stare. What? Sharon turned to me with something like sympathy. Oh, Dave, you didn't know. Your wife wasn't Brad's first affair. She was just the most recent. I looked at Alyssa, who was now crying openly. Is that true? She couldn't even look at me. Brad has a pattern, Sharon continued, her voice carrying across the silent party. He targets unhappy wives, makes them feel special, promises them a better life. Then he gets bored and moves on to the next one. That's not true, Brad protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? Sharon pulled out her phone. Because I have some very interesting text messages from Becky Williams, sent just last week. The bottom dropped out of my world. I turned to look at Becky, Alyssa's best friend, who was standing frozen near the house. Becky? Alyssa's voice was barely a whisper. Becky started to cry. I'm sorry, Liz. It just happened. He said you two were over anyway. The look on Alyssa's face was devastating. Betrayed by her lover and her best friend in the same moment, in front of the entire neighborhood. But I wasn't done yet. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. If I could have your attention for just a moment. I walked to the center of the party where everyone could see me. 2 weeks ago, my wife stood in my backyard and told all of you that I was boring, predictable, like an old lawnmower that never needed maintenance. I looked directly at Alyssa. She said some women might want more adventure. The crowd was hanging on every word. Well, she found her adventure, and now we all know exactly what kind of adventure Brad Fenton provides. I gestured toward him, the kind where you're never the only one on the ride. Brad stepped forward, his face red with anger. You snake. Careful, I said calmly. Your wife's standing right there, along with about 50 witnesses. He stopped, realizing he was trapped. The thing about adventures, I continued, is that they always end, and when they do, you're usually left with less than you started with. I looked around at the faces watching me, neighbors I'd known for years, people I'd helped with home repairs, friends I'd barbecued with dozens of times. Alyssa wanted excitement. Brad promised her a better life. Becky wanted, well, I'm not sure what Becky wanted, but they all got something they didn't expect. I paused, letting the silence build. They got caught. The crowd erupted in nervous laughter and whispered conversations. Sharon walked over to Brad and calmly removed her wedding ring. 22 years, she said, dropping it at his feet. 22 years of marriage, and this is what I get. She turned and walked away, leaving Brad standing alone in the middle of the party. Alyssa tried to approach him, but he shook his head. Don't, he said. Just don't. He followed Sharon toward the street, leaving his Corvette behind. The party broke up quickly after that, neighbors drifting away in small groups, already gossiping about what they'd witnessed. Within an hour, the street was empty except for me, Linda, and Tom. Well, Linda said, that was educational. Think it's over? Tom asked. I looked at the red Corvette still parked at the curb, then at my house where Alyssa sat crying on the front steps. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up to find Brad's Corvette still parked outside my house. Apparently, he'd been too rattled to remember his car after Sharon's public humiliation. I made coffee and sat on my porch, studying the vehicle that had become a symbol of everything I'd lost. By 8 a.m., Brad appeared, walking down the street like a man heading to his execution. He looked like he hadn't slept, wrinkled clothes, stubble, the kind of defeated posture I recognized from my own mirror. Dave, he said as he approached, we need to talk. Do we? He stopped at the bottom of my porch steps. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Have I? I sipped my coffee, studying his face. Because from where I'm sitting, you still don't seem to understand what you've done. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I set down my cup and stood up. You didn't make mistakes, Brad. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices to destroy my marriage. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Explain it to me. He ran his hands through his hair, looking around nervously. Alyssa was unhappy. She said you two were having problems, so you decided to help by sleeping with her? It just happened. Bullshit. I walked down the steps until we were face to face. Nothing just happens. You saw an opportunity and you took it. Just like you did with Jennifer Morrison. Just like you did with Sarah Chen. Just like you were doing with Becky Williams. His face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Sharon was very informative yesterday. Turns out you've been running this same game for years. Find an unhappy wife, play the sympathetic friend, make promises you never intend to keep. That's not— How many, Brad? How many marriages have you destroyed? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The difference is, I continued, this time you picked the wrong target. This time you messed with someone who fights back. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Recognize this? It was a video shot from my security camera showing Brad leaving my house at midnight 3 weeks ago. The timestamp was clearly visible, along with his license plate. I've got dozens of these, I said. Dates, times, license plates, a complete record of your visits to my house while I was at work. His face went pale. What do you want? I want you to understand something. You thought you were taking my wife, my life, my dignity, but all you really did was show me who you both really are. I walked over to his Corvette and ran my hand along the hood. Nice car. Must have cost a fortune. Don't what? Touch your precious car? I smiled. You had no problem touching my wife. That's when Tom appeared around the corner, carrying a toolbox and grinning like Christmas morning. Morning, Dave. Ready to get started? Started on what? Brad demanded. Well, I said, it seems your car has been parked illegally on a public street for over 12 hours. That's a violation of City Ordinance 47B. As a concerned citizen, I called for a tow. As if on cue, a tow truck rounded the corner. You can't do this, Brad protested. Actually, I can. Public street, public ordinance. Of course, you could move it now, but— I held up a small device. Funny thing about modern cars. So many computer chips. So many things that can go wrong. Tom opened his toolbox, revealing an assortment of electronic gadgets. Amazing what you can do with a little technical knowledge. Brad's eyes widened as he realized what we were implying. You're insane, he said. No, I replied calmly. I'm thorough. The tow truck driver got out and approached us. This the vehicle? That's the one, I said. Abandoned property. It's not abandoned, Brad shouted. It's my car. Then why has it been sitting here all night? The driver asked reasonably. While Brad argued with the tow truck driver, I noticed Alyssa walking down the street. She'd been staying at a hotel since the block party. Becky's house was no longer an option. Dave, she said as she approached. Please, we need to talk. About what? About us. About fixing this. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her makeup was smeared and she had the desperate look of someone who'd lost everything. There is no us, Alyssa. There hasn't been for months. That's not true. We can work through this. People do it all the time. People work through mistakes. They work through problems. They don't work through calculated betrayals. Behind us, Brad was still arguing with the tow truck driver while Tom made helpful suggestions about proper vehicle storage. I love you, Alyssa said, and for a moment, she sounded like the woman I'd married. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. You love having a backup plan. But you don't love me. How can you say that? Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 4 months sleeping with another man. If you loved me, you wouldn't have humiliated me in front of our friends. If you loved me, you would have ended our marriage before you started looking for a replacement. She started crying again, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by this stranger who thought love was something you could turn on and off like a faucet. What about our life together? She pleaded. 15 years, Dave. That has to mean something. It did mean something. Past tense. The tow truck had hooked up Brad's Corvette and was preparing to leave. Brad was on his phone, probably calling a lawyer. Where are you taking it? He demanded. City impound, the driver replied. You can pick it up Monday, if you have the right paperwork. As the truck pulled away with Brad's precious car, I felt a deep satisfaction. Not revenge exactly, but justice. Balance. This isn't over, Brad said, walking back toward us. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over since the moment you decided to destroy my marriage. You just didn't know it yet. He looked at Alyssa, then at me, then back at Alyssa. Come on, he said to her. Let's go. But Alyssa didn't move. Go where, Brad? Your wife threw you out. Your business is ruined. Your car just got towed. Where exactly are we supposed to go? The look of panic in his eyes was beautiful. We'll figure it out, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Will we? Like you figured it out with Jennifer Morrison? Or Sarah Chen? Or Becky? He stared at her, realizing she'd finally understood what everyone else had known all along. You used me, she said quietly, just like you used them. Alyssa, no. She turned away from him and looked at me. Dave, I know I don't deserve it, but… You're right, I interrupted. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve forgiveness or understanding or a second chance. You made your choice. I walked back toward my house, leaving them standing in the street together. Dave! Alyssa called after me. What am I supposed to do now? I stopped at my front door and turned around one last time. The same thing I had to do 2 weeks ago, I said. Figure out how to live with the consequences of your choices. I went inside and closed the door, leaving my old life on the other side. Through the window, I watched Brad and Alyssa walk away in opposite directions, both of them alone, both of them finally understanding what they'd lost. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. 3 hours later, Linda knocked on my door with a bottle of champagne and a wicked smile. I heard about the car, she said. News travels fast. In this neighborhood, please. She held up the bottle. I thought we should celebrate. Celebrate what? The fact that karma is real, justice exists, and sometimes the good guys actually win. I looked at her standing on my porch, beautiful, confident, unafraid. A woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. You know, I said, I think I could use some company. Good, she replied, because I brought steaks too, and I happen to know you're excellent with a grill. As we walked toward the backyard, I realized that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what you really need, and sometimes the best revenge is simply living well.